Howard has been in show business his entire life, first as an actor and now as an Academy Award-winning director whose newest film, Inferno, is set to heat up box offices when it opens tomorrow.
So before we catch up with Ron, let's take a brief trip down memory lane.
Ron Howard isn't just the kid from Mayberry or the face behind hits like Apollo 13 and A Beautiful Mind. He's someone whose life behind the camera has been quietly shaped by moments most fans would never imagine. For decades, whispers have followed him. Strange on-set incidents, career crossroads, and personal stories that Hollywood insiders have speculated about, but he never addressed.
Academy Award-winning director Ron Howard's films have racked up over $1 billion at the box office over the past 3 decades.
She's a mermaid.
The man behind such blockbuster hits like Splash, starring Tom Hanks as a guy who falls in love with a mermaid.
Now, in a rare and candid conversation, Howard finally opens up, sharing truths that go beyond the happy endings we see on screen. Stick around, because by the time we're done, you'll get a glimpse of the real Ron Howard, the challenges, the mistakes, the surprises, and the secrets that almost nobody knew. From child star to Hollywood director. When you think of Ron Howard today, you probably imagine the award-winning director behind movies like Apollo 13 or A Beautiful Mind, the kind of guy who seems to have Hollywood all figured out. But before the Oscars and the big budgets, Ron was just a kid from a small town in Oklahoma whose life was anything but ordinary. Born Ronald William Howard in March of 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma, he grew up in a family already steeped in entertainment. His parents, Rance and Jean Howard, were both working actors, so even before he could really understand what acting was, Ron's world was full of scripts, auditions, and set visits. Not long after he was born, the Howards moved west to California, chasing opportunities in film and television. For Ron, that meant childhood was anything but normal. While other kids were climbing trees, riding bikes, and worrying about schoolwork, he was memorizing lines and standing under bright studio lights. By the time he was 6, he had landed the role that would define his early years. Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. Opie Taylor was the freckle-faced, sweet-natured son of Sheriff Andy Taylor. And to audiences, he seemed to live a perfect small-town life, filled with wholesome adventures and life lessons. But behind the cameras, Ron's experience wasn't exactly idyllic. Growing up as one of the main attractions on a hit show came with pressures most kids couldn't even imagine. There were whispers over the years about clashes between cast members. And though Andy Griffith reportedly acted as a mentor and protector, the stress of being a child star didn't just disappear. Ron himself has admitted in interviews that the experience built resilience, but also left its scars. Imagine being a little kid whose every move is scrutinized by millions of viewers. Homework was probably the least of his worries, compared to memorizing scripts and nailing scenes week after week. Money didn't make things easier either. Unlike child actors today who sometimes walk away with massive paychecks, Ron's family lived modestly. His parents prioritized grounding him in reality, which meant no flashy cars or extravagant gifts, just structure, rules, and reminders to work hard. Being constantly recognized in public, carrying the weight of expectations, and trying to fit into a world that treated him as both a kid and a performer left lasting impressions that would follow him into adulthood. By the 1970s, Ron was eager to step out of the shadow of Opie Taylor. He didn't want to be typecast forever as the innocent small-town boy. That's when he landed another iconic TV role, Richie Cunningham on Happy Days. The show was a massive success and made him a household name again, this time as the all-American teenager with the perfect smile. But even with Happy Days, he struggled to fully shake the child star image. Being adored on screen didn't necessarily mean freedom behind it. and Ron knew he needed something bigger to prove himself as an actor and later as a filmmaker. The breakthrough that wasn't so simple. The turning point in Ron Howard's career came in 1973 with American Graffiti, a movie that, in hindsight, feels like a classic stepping stone for so many Hollywood careers. Directed by a young George Lucas before Star Wars changed everything, the film brought together a cast of future stars: Richard Dreyfuss, Cindy Williams, and Harrison Ford, who was still carving out his path. Ron played Steve Bolander, the high school senior spending his last night cruising the Strip with friends before heading off to college. On paper, it was the perfect role. A chance to step away from the wholesome Opie Taylor image and show audiences he could handle more grown-up, complex characters. The movie itself was a surprise hit. Made on a shoestring budget of just over $700,000, it grossed more than $140 million, which today sounds insane for something shot so fast and raw. Critics loved it, audiences flocked to it, and Hollywood seemed to finally take notice of Ron as an actor in his own right, not just the kid from Mayberry. You'd think that would have been the turning point where he felt free, like he'd escaped the shadow of Opie and Richie Cunningham for good. But life, as we know, rarely follows the script. Behind the scenes, things weren't as smooth as the finished film suggested. Sets are hectic, sure, but Ron's experience included tensions with cast members and a pressure cooker environment where he felt constantly watched and scrutinized. People whisper about rivalries, pranks, and even moments where Ron felt like he was more of a target than a collaborator. The intensity of being a former child star trying to reinvent himself added another layer of stress that nobody outside the set could see. It was also around this time that some of the first persistent rumors about Ron started circulating, stories that would linger, quietly shaping public perception for decades. And while the film itself would cement his status as a serious actor, the personal cost behind the camera was something he rarely talked about until 2025, when, in a candid interview, Ron opened up about a period on set that left him feeling vulnerable and exposed, revealing struggles that fans had no idea existed. It's one of those moments where the glittering success you see on screen barely scratches the surface of what someone actually went through. And for Ron, American Graffiti was both a breakthrough and the start of challenges that would follow him into his later career. Ron Howard breaks his silence. In a candid 2025 interview, Ron Howard opened up about a chapter of his career he's rarely discussed, a period on the set of American Graffiti where he says he felt less like a co-star and more like a target. At just 19, fresh off Happy Days, and carrying the weight of being America's favorite little TV kid, Ron was still figuring out life outside of Mayberry. And suddenly, he was thrown into a high-energy film set with actors who were older, bolder, and, in his words, sometimes ruthless. He described being bullied by Harrison Ford and Paul Le Mat. Ford, around 30 at the time, and working carpentry jobs to keep by before his big break, played Bob Falfa, the cocky drag racer, while Le Mat, a few years older, was John Milner, the hot rod king of the Strip. At first, what might have seemed like playful hazing quickly crossed a line. Ron recalls a sweltering summer day in Petaluma, California. The crew had just moved filming from Modesto, and the streets were alive with extras, roaring engines, and the controlled chaos of a movie in production. Ron had just bought a brand new 1970 Volkswagen Beetle, his first real taste of independence and a little escape from the constant scrutiny of fame. It became the target. During lunch, Ford and Le Mat climbed onto the roof of the Holiday Inn with beers in hand, laughing and joking like young men who weren't thinking about consequences. From above, they started hurling empty bottles at Ron's car. Glass shattered across the asphalt, bouncing off the beetle and landing dangerously close to him. Someone allegedly shouted, "Dance, Opie, dance!" mocking the innocence that had defined him for so long. Ron froze, dodging shards as the bottles crashed, later describing it as surreal and terrifying, like being trapped in someone else's reckless game. That evening, the story took another turn. Ron says the two allegedly locked him inside a production trailer, spiked drinks on the table, and continued the taunting. He called the experience humiliating and isolating, a moment that amplified anxieties he had carried since childhood. "I was the kid everyone saw as pure and untouched," he explained years later. "They wanted to toughen me up, but it just broke something inside." Ford eventually apologized in 2017, calling his behavior "stupid youthful antics," while LeMat hasn't publicly addressed the story. Insiders, though, say it created tension on set that lingered for years. At the time, Ron stayed quiet. Hollywood in the 1970s wasn't forgiving, especially for someone transitioning from child actor to adult roles. Speaking up could have branded him as difficult, and he had a career to protect. Interestingly, this rough start didn't just leave scars. It shaped the way he runs sets as a director. Ron credits that period with instilling a commitment to creating kinder, more collaborative environments for actors, a philosophy he carried into his first directing job with Grand Theft Auto in 1977. But as he hints, the challenges of American Graffiti were just the beginning, a first taste of the pressures, politics, and personal battles that would follow him through Hollywood. Trials, rumors, and setbacks. Ron Howard's story doesn't stop with American Graffiti or the bullying on set. It keeps going, and the next chapters are just as eye-opening if you look closely. Growing up in Hollywood and then trying to make it work as an adult isn't all red carpets and Oscars. It comes with its own messy mix of gossip, mistakes, near misses, and behind-the-scenes chaos that most people never see. Take his teenage years, for instance. In 1970, while he was still in high school and balancing homework with filming commitments, a rumor started circulating that his girlfriend at the time, Cheryl Alley, would later become his wife of over 50 years, and was pregnant. For context, this was long before social media, but Hollywood gossip still traveled fast. The story got blown out of proportion almost instantly. Headlines implied scandal, set buzzed with whispered speculation, and suddenly, a private teenage romance was public property. The fallout was immediate. Ron lost a $2,000 guest role on a TV show because producers labeled him damaged goods, not because of anything he had actually done, but simply because of perception. He later said in interviews it felt crushing. "We were just kids in love," he remembered. There was no scandal, no malice, just the way Hollywood can turn a story into a career risk. Despite that early blow, Ron and Cheryl didn't let rumors define their future. They married 5 years later, in 1975, and went on to build a family together with 4 children, including Bryce Dallas Howard, who would later become a well-known actress. Over the decades, whispers about near divorces in the 1980s popped up occasionally in gossip columns, mostly tied to Ron's famously intense work ethic. He laughed about it in a 2025 interview. "Every marriage has storms, but we weathered ours," giving a glimpse of how he managed to juggle a demanding career and family life without letting either one completely fall apart. Of course, it wasn't just love and gossip that tested him. His early directing work came with real risks, including physical danger and legal headaches. On his directorial debut, Grand Theft Auto, in 1977, a car stunt went wrong, injuring stuntman Paul Bartel, which led to a lawsuit quietly settled the following year. Fast forward to 1990, Backdraft brought some of Hollywood's most dangerous fire stunts to life, but it also resulted in burns to Kurt Russell and several crew members, creating millions in medical bills and insurance claims. And even decades later, in 2013, filming Rush led to a high-speed racing accident that hospitalized driver David Crowder, with a settlement reached in 2014. Legal troubles weren't limited to stunts. Imagine Entertainment, Ron's production company, also had to navigate its share of battles. In 1989, writer Elena Vasquez sued, claiming the script for Parenthood was stolen. The case was settled for $500,000. Years later, in 2015, 50 Sudanese refugees alleged exploitation during the making of The Good Lie. That lawsuit quietly settled in 2017, and while Ron wasn't personally named, he said situations like these remind you Hollywood isn't glamorous, it's brutal, adding that managing the chaos behind the scenes can feel just as high stakes as any high-speed chase or explosive set piece he's directed. Even beyond stunts and lawsuits, Ron reflected on how fame and perception shaped him. He compared his acting career to the Beatles' phenomenon in interviews, explaining that he finally felt free to look back on his earlier years without feeling guarded or defensive. In my own way, I recognize that I feel that way about talking about my acting career and my childhood, Howard said, while promoting his new thriller, Eden. I think I've been a director far longer than I was an actor, and I've been rewarded for it in ways that mean a lot to me. It's liberating. So now people want to call me Opie, want to call me Richie. That's a nickname I feel affection for in a way I didn't before. He went on to explain that being recognized for something early in your career and then continuing to chase creative ambitions has its own challenges. You want recognition for what's recent as well, and eventually you arrive at a place where you can look at the whole journey and appreciate fans or media interest in any and all facets, he said. This reflection came as he celebrated milestones like the 30th anniversary of Apollo 13, a blockbuster drama about the space mission, starring Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, Gary Sinise, Kevin Bacon, and Ed Harris. His parents, Rance and Gene Spiegel Howard, appeared in the film, as did his brother Clint. The movie earned 9 Oscar nominations, won 2, and made over $355 million at the box office. Beyond box office success, moments like these remind him of mentorship and inspiration, something he reflected on in his 2025 interviews with particular warmth for Robert Redford, who he described as a guiding presence in his life. Robert Redford, the actor-director who gave us classics like Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, and practically defined an era of cool, passed away at 89 in September 2025. And Ron Howard finally broke his silence. He posted on X saying, "R.I.P. and thank you, Robert Redford, a tremendously influential cultural figure, artistic game changer." But that post hinted at more than admiration. It carried the subtle undertone of a complicated relationship. Fans have been speculating about a quiet rivalry between the two, because while they shared a mutual respect, both transitioned from acting to directing, both navigated Hollywood's highs and lows, and both had a hand in shaping independent cinema. Redford founded the Sundance Film Festival back in 1981, giving countless indie filmmakers a platform. And many see that move as indirectly boosting Ron's early directorial work. Ron himself praised Redford's pioneering spirit, but also dropped the line, "We admired each other, but competition was fierce," which immediately set rumor mills spinning. The speculation isn't just about professional rivalry. Fans think this silence might also nod to Redford's personal struggles, the kind of things Hollywood never really shows. Health issues later in life, devastating family losses, including his son Scott, who tragically died of PSYDS in 1959, and the cutthroat nature of the industry that both men knew too well. Ron's daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, had the chance to work with Redford in 2016 on Pete's Dragon, and she described him as warm and vital. In her tribute, she added, "We've lost a giant, and that sentiment felt like it went deeper than professional admiration." Even Meryl Streep, who starred with Redford in Out of Africa, called him one of the lions, reinforcing that this was more than just Hollywood hype. It was a passing of a true icon. Meanwhile, fans were going wild online. Social media erupted. On X, one user wrote, "Ron Howard's story breaks my heart. Hollywood eats its young." Another said, "Finally, the truth about American graffiti." Ford and Lamat owe him big-time TikTok creators even started recreating the infamous bottle-throwing scene from Ron's early career, and the videos racked up millions of views in just days. Of course, not everyone was sympathetic. Some pointed out that much of this had been reported before, citing a 2024 article from Far Out magazine. Still, the overwhelming response praised Ron's vulnerability. At 71, he's owning his pain. "Respect," one comment read, and it resonated because it wasn't just a story about past trauma, it was about growth, accountability, and perspective. What's really interesting is that this isn't just Ron's story, it's Hollywood's story. Generations of child stars, from Macaulay Culkin to Judy Garland, have faced similar pressures: bullying, exploitation, intense mental health challenges, and career-defining stress. By opening up about his past, Ron is highlighting not just personal lessons, but systemic issues, showing that even someone who seemed untouchable, as Opie had to navigate a complicated, often unforgiving industry. And yet, he's still moving forward. In 2025, he's directing Eden, a thriller starring Jude Law and Sydney Sweeney, proving that his career is far from over. From the Mayberry set of the early 60s to the director's chair on modern Hollywood productions, Ron's story is a testament to resilience, growth, and the fact that the hardest battles often happen behind the camera. His silence has finally been broken, and the truth is out, leaving fans, old and new, looking at Ron Howard in a completely different light. What do you think about what Ron Howard finally revealed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe for more Hollywood deep dives.